I am Jessica Turner, 35 years old, and the marketing director at TechVision Enterprises. My birthday started like any other workday until my newest employee Ethan Williams arrived with an expensive bottle of whiskey. I smiled politely despite not being a whiskey drinker. Later that evening, I spontaneously gave the bottle to our CEO Walter Phillips during our dinner meeting. The next morning, Ethan called. "So how was the whiskey?" he asked eagerly. "Oh, I gave it to our CEO. He loves it," I replied casually. There was silence then. Ethan shouted, "You did what?" Before I continue this wild story, tell me where you are watching from. And hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever received an inappropriate gift at work. The call ended abruptly with Ethan saying he would see me at the office immediately. His tone left me confused and slightly concerned as I drove to work that morning. To understand why his reaction was so extreme, I need to take you back and explain my position at TechVision Enterprises. I had been with the company for 5 years, starting as a marketing manager and working my way up to director through countless late nights and successful campaigns. The tech industry is notoriously competitive, and TechVision was no exception. Our company developed enterprise software solutions that revolutionized how corporations managed their supply chains. With over 200 employees and annual revenue exceeding $80 million, we were successful but still fighting for market share against bigger competitors. My marketing team consisted of 12 talented individuals, each bringing unique skills to our department. Most important among my team members was my assistant Heather Davis, who had been with me since I took the director position 3 years ago. Heather was brilliantly organized, loyal, and perceptive. She often noticed office politics I missed while focusing on campaigns and metrics. "You know, Daniel is trying to undermine your budget proposal again," Heather had warned me last week, referring to Daniel Cooper, our vice president of sales. Daniel was 47, had been with the company since its founding, and believed marketing was just a support function for sales rather than a strategic department. We had butted heads constantly over resource allocation and campaign direction. At the top of our corporate hierarchy sat Walter Phillips, the CEO and co-founder. Walter was brilliant but intimidating, rarely connecting with employees below the executive level. Most of my interactions with him were formal presentations where he asked pointed questions and made quick decisions. Getting one-on-one time with Walter was nearly impossible unless there was a significant problem or opportunity. Then there was Ethan Williams, my newest team member. I had hired him 4 months ago as a digital marketing specialist, after he impressed everyone in his interview with innovative campaign ideas and technical knowledge. Ethan was 29, came with stellar recommendations from his previous employer, and quickly proved himself valuable. He was quiet about his personal life, but excelled at his work, often staying late and volunteering for challenging projects. The team liked him, though some found him intensely focused to the point of being mysterious. My birthday had fallen on a Tuesday that year. TechVision had a tradition of small office celebrations for team members. Nothing extravagant usually, just a card, a small cake in the break room, and perhaps a modest gift card from the team. I never made a big deal about my birthday, preferring to keep the focus on work rather than personal celebrations. The morning of my birthday, I remembered feeling slightly conflicted about workplace relationships. As a female director in a male-dominated industry, I was constantly balancing professionalism with approachability. I wanted my team to respect me but not fear me, to feel appreciated but not confuse work relationships with personal friendships. This balancing act was exhausting at times. "Happy birthday, Jessica," Heather had greeted me that morning, placing a coffee and a small wrapped package on my desk. "The team is planning a small celebration at lunch. Nothing fancy, just cake in the conference room." "Thanks, Heather. That sounds perfect," I replied, appreciating her understanding of my preference for low-key celebrations. Throughout the morning, various team members stopped by my office with birthday wishes. A few emails from colleagues in other departments arrived in my inbox. It was pleasant but not distracting from the work at hand, which was exactly how I preferred to handle personal milestones in a professional setting. I had an important presentation to the executive team scheduled for the following week, outlining our marketing strategy for the upcoming quarter. Daniel had been questioning my proposed budget increases, and I knew the presentation needed to be flawless to secure the resources my department needed. Even on my birthday, this upcoming challenge occupied much of my mental energy. By lunchtime, I had nearly forgotten about the planned celebration until Heather came to escort me to the conference room. The team had decorated with a few streamers and balloons. A chocolate cake with a single candle sat on the table alongside a card signed by everyone. It was thoughtful and appropriate, striking the right balance between acknowledgement and professionalism. As we finished the cake, I noticed Ethan was missing. "Has anyone seen Ethan today?" I asked. "He mentioned something about running an errand during lunch," one of my team members replied. "Said he would be back soon." I nodded and continued chatting with the team. As a director, I was careful not to show favoritism, but I had found myself impressed with Ethan's work ethic and creative thinking. Still, there was something about him I could not quite place, a guardedness that seemed unusual for someone so apparently open with his ideas. Little did I know that his absence and the gift he was about to give me would set in motion a chain of events that would threaten everything I had worked for. The modest birthday celebration was winding down when Ethan burst through the conference room door, slightly out of breath and carrying a beautifully wrapped rectangular box. "Sorry I am late," he said, his face flushed from rushing. "Happy birthday, Jessica. I wanted to get you something special." The room fell silent as everyone watched him place the box in front of me. It was wrapped in elegant silver paper with a blue ribbon, clearly not something hastily purchased from the office gift shop. I felt a twinge of discomfort. The package looked expensive, more personal than the typical workplace gift. "You really did not have to get me anything, Ethan," I said, attempting to keep my tone light while establishing appropriate boundaries. "Please open it," he insisted with an eager smile. "I think you will appreciate it." With the entire team watching, I carefully unwrapped the package, removing the ribbon and peeling back the paper. Inside was a black box with gold lettering. As I lifted the lid, I found myself staring at a bottle of whiskey nestled in velvet padding. Not just any whiskey, but Macallan Estate Reserve, a bottle I recognized from luxury advertisements. "Wow, this is quite something," I managed, trying to mask my discomfort with gratitude. "Thank you, Ethan." I could feel the team's eyes on me, some with raised eyebrows. The gift was clearly expensive, far exceeding the value of typical office presents. Heather shot me a concerned glance from across the table. "It is a 25-year single malt," Ethan explained proudly. "I remembered you mentioning whiskey in a conversation we had last month." The truth was, I barely recalled the conversation, and certainly had not indicated any special interest in high-end spirits. I occasionally enjoyed a glass of wine, but was not a whiskey drinker at all. More concerning was the inappropriateness of such an expensive gift from a direct report. "Very thoughtful," I replied diplomatically. "Thank you for remembering." The celebration wrapped up shortly after, with team members returning to their desks. As the room cleared, Heather lingered behind, waiting until we were alone. "That whiskey is worth at least $2,000, she whispered once the door closed. I looked it up discreetly on my phone. "Jessica, this crosses so many lines." My stomach tightened. I had guessed it was expensive, but had not realized the extent. "Are you sure?" I asked, picking up the bottle to examine it more closely. "Positive. The Macallan Estate Reserve is extremely rare. Collectors pay premium prices for it," Heather confirmed. "This goes way beyond appropriate gift giving. The company policy clearly states gifts between employees should not exceed $50 in value." She was right. As a director, I was familiar with our company policies, including the one addressing gifts. The policy existed specifically to prevent situations where gifts might create perceived obligations or inappropriate relationships. "I need to document this," I sighed, placing the bottle back in its box, "and have a conversation with Ethan about appropriate boundaries." "Do you think he has ulterior motives?" Heather asked cautiously. 4 months is not long enough to justify this level of gift-giving between colleagues, especially from a subordinate to a supervisor. I considered her question carefully. Ethan had never behaved inappropriately before, but this gesture raised red flags. Was he trying to curry favor for a promotion? Create a sense of obligation? Or was there something I was missing entirely? "I will speak with him privately this afternoon," I decided. For now, I need to follow protocol and document the gift. After lunch, I completed the required form for gifts exceeding company policy thresholds, detailing the item and approximate value. I emailed a copy to HR and placed the original in my files. The whiskey bottle remained in its box on my credenza, a beautiful but troubling presence in my otherwise orderly office. At 3:30 that afternoon, I called Ethan into my office, closing the door for privacy. "Ethan, I wanted to thank you again for the birthday gift," I began carefully. However, I need to address the value of the item and our company policies around gift giving. Ethan's expression shifted subtly, a flash of something unreadable crossing his features before he composed himself. I apologize if it made you uncomfortable, he said. I just wanted to show my appreciation for the mentorship you have provided these past few months. I appreciate the sentiment, but gifts between employees, especially between managers and their reports, need to stay within reasonable limits, I explained. I have documented the gift per company policy, but going forward, please be aware of these boundaries. Of course, he nodded, appearing contrite. I completely understand. Thank you for understanding, I replied, wanting to end the conversation on a positive note. Your work has been excellent, and I value your contributions to the team based on your performance, not gifts. After Ethan left my office, I sat staring at the whiskey bottle, still troubled. Something about his reaction seemed off, almost calculated. The brief flash in his eyes suggested he was not surprised by my response, but had anticipated it. As the workday ended, I placed the whiskey back in its box, unsure what to do with it. Company policy did not require me to return gifts merely to document them appropriately. Still, keeping such an expensive item from a subordinate felt wrong regardless of what the policy permitted. Little did I know that my decision about what to do with that bottle would change the course of my career forever. After everyone had left the office, I remained at my desk, staring at the whiskey box and contemplating my options. The bottle represented a problem I had not anticipated facing on my birthday, a boundary crossed that needed to be addressed beyond our brief conversation. This was not the first time an employee had attempted to gain favor through gifts or special attention. 2 years ago, a team member had offered tickets to a sold-out concert, clearly hoping for preferential treatment during promotion season. I had declined politely but firmly. Another time, a colleague had attempted to establish an inappropriate level of personal connection by sharing confidential information about other departments. I had shut that down immediately. But something about Ethan's gift felt different. The sheer value was unprecedented, and his reaction to my policy reminder had lacked genuine surprise. Opening my laptop, I searched for information about the whiskey, confirming Heather's assessment. The Macallan Estate Reserve was indeed valued between $2,000 and $2,500 depending on the seller. Some listings described it as investment grade rather than merely consumable. Why would a digital marketing specialist making a mid-level salary give his boss a gift worth nearly a month's rent? The question troubled me as I prepared to leave for the evening. My phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. I had completely forgotten about my dinner meeting with Walter Phillips, our CEO. Once per quarter, Walter met with each department head individually outside the office. These rare one-on-one opportunities were valuable for discussing long-term strategy away from the formal boardroom setting. The timing was coincidental, but perhaps fortuitous. I needed to clear my head, and focusing on company strategy might provide the perspective I needed regarding the whiskey situation. We met at Bellamy's, an upscale restaurant downtown frequented by executives. Walter was already seated when I arrived, reviewing documents on his tablet. "Jessica, happy birthday," he said, looking up as I approached. I was surprised he remembered, as Walter was not known for tracking personal details of his employees. "Thank you, Walter. I appreciate you remembering," I replied, taking the seat across from him. "Your assistant included it in the calendar invite," he admitted with a rare smile. "I cannot take credit for exceptional memory." The dinner began with discussion of market trends and competitor movements. Walter was concerned about our upcoming board meeting, where we needed to address slowing growth in certain product segments. "The board is getting restless about the Eastern region numbers," Walter explained. "Daniel insists his team needs more time. But the investors want results now." I saw an opening to address my department's contributions. Our new targeted campaign is showing promising early results in those territories. If we could increase the marketing budget for that region specifically, I believe we could support sales more effectively. Walter nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting. Daniel has been resistant to reallocating resources there." The conversation continued through appetizers and main courses. As we waited for dessert, Walter surprised me by shifting to a more personal topic. "What do you do outside of marketing, Jessica? Any hobbies or collections?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. In 5 years, Walter had never expressed interest in my personal life. "I enjoy hiking and photography," I answered truthfully. "Nothing too exotic." Walter nodded. I have been collecting whiskeys for nearly 15 years now, he shared. Started as a way to celebrate company milestones, but evolved into a serious hobby. I have over 100 bottles now, some quite rare. The coincidence was almost too perfect. Here was the CEO revealing his passion for whiskey collection on the very day I had received an expensive bottle as an inappropriate gift. Actually, I said, making a split-second decision. I received a bottle of Macallan Estate Reserve today as a birthday gift. I am not much of a whiskey drinker myself, and it seems wasted on someone who cannot appreciate it properly. Walter's eyes widened with genuine interest. The Estate Reserve. That is an exceptional bottle. May I ask who gave you such a generous gift? I hesitated briefly but decided transparency was best. One of my team members, Ethan Williams. It was thoughtful, but frankly exceeds appropriate gift-giving boundaries between manager and employee. Indeed it does, Walter agreed, looking thoughtful. That particular whiskey is quite sought after among collectors. Would you like to have it? I offered impulsively. I documented receiving it per company policy, but I would much rather it go to someone who can truly appreciate it. Walter studied me for a moment, perhaps assessing whether this was some kind of strategic move. That is a very generous offer, Jessica. Are you certain? Absolutely, I replied, feeling increasingly confident in my decision. I would be happy to bring it to your office tomorrow. I would be delighted to add it to my collection, Walter said, his usual reserved demeanor warming slightly. Perhaps you could join me tomorrow afternoon to discuss your marketing strategy for the Eastern region in more detail. The board meeting is next week, and I would like to better understand your perspective before presenting to the investors. I could hardly believe my luck. A private strategy meeting with the CEO was rare and valuable, especially before a critical board presentation. In that moment, my impulsive decision to offer the whiskey seemed brilliant. I had turned an uncomfortable situation into a strategic advantage while adhering to company policies. We finished dinner on excellent terms, with Walter showing more interest in my department's initiatives than he had in months. I drove home feeling confident and professionally satisfied. The awkwardness of Ethan's inappropriate gift transformed into an unexpected opportunity. Once home, I noticed a text message from Ethan. Hope you are enjoying the whiskey. It is best served neat room temperature. Let me know what you think of the flavor profile. I did not respond immediately, deciding to address it in person the following day after my meeting with Walter. As I prepared for bed, I felt I had handled a potentially problematic situation with grace and professional savvy. How terribly wrong I was. My phone rang at 7:15 the next morning as I was getting ready for work. Seeing Ethan's name on the caller ID, I answered, expecting a routine question about the day's scheduled meetings. Good morning, Ethan, I said, balancing the phone while gathering my things. Jessica, I wanted to check in, he said, his voice unnaturally cheerful. So how was the whiskey? Did you try it last night? The question seemed odd given our conversation about appropriate boundaries the previous day, but I decided to be straightforward. Oh, I gave it to our CEO, Walter Phillips, I replied casually. He collects whiskey and loves it. We had our quarterly dinner meeting last night, and when he mentioned his collection, it seemed perfect. He was thrilled. The line went completely silent. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Ethan, are you still there? You did what? He suddenly shouted, his voice so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. The panic and anger in his voice was shocking. I gave the whiskey to Walter, I repeated, confused by his extreme reaction. Ethan, what is going on? We discussed yesterday that the gift was inappropriate. You need to get it back, he interrupted, speaking rapidly now. Tell him there was a mistake. Say anything. We need that bottle back immediately. That is not possible, I said firmly, my confusion turning to irritation. Ethan, you need to explain what is happening right now. He exhaled sharply, and when he spoke again, his voice had completely changed. Gone was the eager-to-please employee, replaced by someone more authoritative and urgent. Jessica, I need you to listen very carefully, he said. I am not just a digital marketing specialist. I have been working undercover with federal investigators for the past 4 months, building a case against Daniel Cooper for financial fraud and embezzlement. I nearly dropped my phone. What? That is impossible. The whiskey bottle was not just a gift, he continued, ignoring my disbelief. It contains crucial evidence. There is a tiny storage device embedded in the seal that holds financial records Daniel thought he had destroyed. We planted it there as a secure way to get the information out of the building without raising suspicion. My mind raced as I tried to process what he was saying. Why would you give it to me? Why not just take the evidence directly to the authorities? We needed the chain of custody to remain unbroken with documentation, Ethan explained. Your birthday provided the perfect cover for transferring the device. The plan was for you to keep it at home untouched until I received authorization to retrieve it this weekend. I never anticipated you would give it to someone else, especially the CEO who works closely with Daniel. How was I supposed to know any of this? I demanded, my voice rising with stress. You gave me an inappropriate gift worth thousands of dollars with no explanation. We could not risk anyone overhearing or suspecting. That is how undercover operations work, he shot back. But now months of investigation might be compromised if Walter opens that bottle or gives it to Daniel. My stomach dropped as the implications sank in. Oh God, I have a meeting with Walter this afternoon to discuss the Eastern Region performance issues. The Eastern Region is exactly where Daniel has been laundering company funds through fake marketing vendors, Ethan exclaimed. That is what the evidence proves. Jessica, you need to get to the office immediately. Federal agents are already on their way there now. I grabbed my keys and raced to my car, my mind spinning with questions and fear. Had I unknowingly destroyed a federal investigation, could I be implicated somehow? Was my career about to implode because of a well-intentioned decision? When I arrived at the office, the parking lot already contained several unmarked vehicles I did not recognize. As I walked toward the entrance, a woman in a dark suit intercepted me. Jessica Turner, she asked, flashing a badge. I am Special Agent Samantha Rivers with the FBI. We need to speak with you immediately. She escorted me not to my office, but to a small conference room where Ethan sat with another agent. His expression was grim. Miss Turner, Agent Rivers began once the door closed. I understand you were given a bottle of Macallan Estate Reserve whiskey yesterday, which you then transferred to Walter Phillips without authorization. Is that correct? Yes, I answered, my mouth dry. I had no idea it contained evidence. Ethan gave it to me as a birthday gift without explaining its significance. Agent Rivers turned to Ethan with a look of barely contained fury. The operation protocol was clear. The device was to remain in your possession until extraction. Giving it to Miss Turner without briefing her compromised the entire operation. It was a calculated risk, Ethan defended himself. Keeping it in my possession was becoming too dangerous. Daniel was starting to monitor my movements. And now the evidence is in the hands of someone who regularly meets with our primary suspect, the agent countered. Brilliant work. I interrupted their argument. Walter does not know Daniel is under investigation, does he? Could he be involved as well? The agents exchanged glances. We have no evidence implicating Walter Phillips, Agent Rivers admitted. But he and Daniel have worked closely for years. We cannot rule out complicity. Miss Turner, the male agent, addressed me. Given the circumstances, we are placing you on administrative leave pending further investigation. Please surrender your company keycard and laptop. Administrative leave, I repeated in disbelief. I did nothing wrong. I followed company policy regarding the gift and made a reasonable decision based on the information I had. Nevertheless, you are now involved in an active federal investigation, Agent Rivers stated firmly. Until we recover the evidence and determine next steps, you cannot continue normal duties here. Security arrived to escort me from the building. As I walked past my team's workspace, I saw Heather's concerned face, but I was not permitted to speak with her or anyone else. Humiliated and confused, I was led through the main lobby where curious employees watched my exit. My perfect career record, built over years of dedication and hard work, had unraveled in less than 24 hours because of a bottle of whiskey. The next 3 days passed in a blur of anxiety and isolation. My apartment, usually a haven after busy workdays, became a prison of uncertainty. I checked my phone constantly, hoping for news from the company or investigators, but received nothing beyond a formal email confirming my administrative leave pending internal review. News outlets began reporting on an ongoing investigation at Tech Vision Enterprises, though details remained vague. The articles mentioned potential financial irregularities, but named no specific employees. Still, I knew it was only a matter of time before my involvement became public knowledge. I tried calling Walter multiple times, but my calls went straight to voicemail. Emails to his office received automated replies about his unavailability. The CEO, who had been so engaged during our dinner, was now completely inaccessible. Sleep became elusive as worst-case scenarios played through my mind on repeat. Would I face criminal charges for interfering with a federal investigation? Would my career in marketing be permanently tarnished? How would I explain this situation to future employers? On the fourth day, I reached out to Laura Bennett, an attorney specializing in white-collar cases whom I had met at a networking event last year. She agreed to meet me that afternoon. Based on what you have told me, Laura said after listening to my explanation, you are unlikely to face criminal charges since you had no knowledge of the evidence or investigation. However, your employment situation is more complicated. What do you mean? I asked. Companies often distance themselves from employees involved in federal investigations regardless of culpability. She explained. It protects their reputation and limits liability. I have seen cases where innocent employees were terminated with minimal severance just to create clean separation from the situation. Her words confirmed my deepest fears. So even though I did nothing wrong, I could lose everything I have worked for. We need to be proactive, Laura advised. Document everything that happened, every conversation, every decision, with timestamps and context. We need to establish your actions were reasonable based on the information available to you at the time. I spent that evening creating a detailed timeline, including my conversation with Ethan about the inappropriateness of the gift and my subsequent documentation per company policy. The process was therapeutic but did little to calm my growing paranoia. The next morning I received an anonymous text. You should have kept your nose out of things that do not concern you. Hope the unemployment line treats you well. I showed the message to Laura, who advised me to save it but not respond. This suggests someone believes you intentionally disrupted their activities, she noted. It could be Daniel attempting to intimidate you. Curiosity and desperation drove me to research Daniel Cooper more thoroughly than I ever had before. His LinkedIn profile showed several gaps between positions that had not seemed significant previously. A deeper search revealed he had worked at 2 other companies that had experienced financial scandals shortly after his departure, though he had never been formally charged. I also discovered discrepancies in Ethan's background. While his technical credentials checked out the companies where he claimed previous employment, had no record of him when I called their HR departments directly. This confirmed his cover story was fabricated, lending credibility to his claim of being an undercover investigator. As the second week of my administrative leave began, I received a brief call from HR, informing me the investigation was ongoing and my status remained unchanged. The perfunctory tone suggested I had already been written off by the company I had served loyally for 5 years. That night, after a particularly discouraging conversation with Laura about similar cases that had ended in termination, I made a decision. If the system would not clear my name, I would have to do it myself. I needed to recover the evidence from that whiskey bottle before it was destroyed or fell into the wrong hands. The plan was risky and potentially illegal, but with my career and reputation hanging in the balance, I felt I had no choice. I would need access to Walter's office where he kept his whiskey collection. I would need inside help. Most importantly, I would need a legitimate reason to be in the building despite my administrative leave. I called Heather from a coffee shop using a public Wi-Fi connection rather than my home network. Jessica, I have been so worried, she answered immediately. What is happening? No one will tell us anything. I cannot explain everything right now, I said quietly, but I need your help. Is Walter keeping the whiskey bottle in his office collection? Yes, she confirmed. I saw it yesterday when I delivered some reports. It is displayed prominently in his cabinet. He seems quite proud of it. Has he opened it? I asked, holding my breath. I do not think so. The seal still looked intact, she replied. Jessica, whatever is going on in the office feels strange. Daniel has been locked in meetings with lawyers all week, and there are people I do not recognize conducting interviews with staff. Heather, I need to get into the building tomorrow, I said decisively. I have a plan, but I will need your help. Of course, she agreed without hesitation. Just tell me what you need. My loyal assistant did not ask questions about why I needed access to the whiskey bottle. Her trust in me was both touching and crucial for what I needed to do next. With her help, I began planning my return to Tech Vision Enterprises, not as a director under investigation, but as someone fighting to reveal the truth and save her career. The stakes could not have been higher. If I failed, I would likely face not just termination, but possible criminal charges for interfering with an active investigation. But if I succeeded in recovering the evidence, I might clear my name and expose the real criminal in our midst. Tomorrow would determine whether my impulsive birthday decision would destroy my career or ultimately save it. The following morning, I reviewed my plan one final time. Heather had confirmed that Walter would be in budget meetings until 11:30, giving me a narrow window to access his office. She had also learned that the board meeting where Walter planned to open the whiskey for a celebratory toast was scheduled for the next day. I dressed in my most professional outfit, a navy blue suit that projected confidence and authority. In my briefcase, I carried the original gift documentation and company policy printouts, creating a legitimate pretext for my visit. The security guards knew me well, but I would still need to explain my presence, despite being on administrative leave. Arriving at Tech Vision at precisely 10:45, I approached the front desk with practiced calm. "Good morning, Thomas." I greeted the security guard. "I have an appointment with HR regarding my administrative documentation." Thomas looked uncertain. "Miss Turner, I was not notified of any appointment. Let me check the system." Jenna in HR requested I bring original documentation related to a gift disclosure, I explained smoothly. She should have added it to the visitor log this morning. While Thomas checked the system, I noticed several employees watching curiously from the lobby. My presence had not gone unnoticed. "I do not see anything in the system," Thomas frowned. "That is strange," I replied, maintaining my composure. "Could you call Jenna directly? I drove 40 minutes to get here, and these documents are time-sensitive for the investigation." The mention of the investigation worked as intended. Thomas, not wanting to impede a matter already causing tension in the office, made a quick call to HR. Fortunately, Jenna was in a meeting, and her assistant, uncertain of the details, erred on the side of caution. "Go ahead and issue Miss Turner a temporary visitor badge," the assistant told Thomas over the phone. "Jenna can meet with her when she is available." With a visitor badge clipped to my jacket, I entered the building, nodding professionally to former colleagues who stared as I passed. Heather met me by the elevators as planned. "HR is expecting you in 20 minutes, she whispered as we entered the elevator alone. Walter is still in his meeting, but his assistant just left for an early lunch. The executive floor is relatively quiet right now. "Thank you," I said, squeezing her hand gratefully. "If anyone asks, I came to drop off original documentation and ran into you coincidentally." The executive floor was indeed quiet when we arrived. Heather led me toward Walter's office, stopping before we reached his assistant's empty desk. "I will create a distraction if anyone comes," she promised. "His office is unlocked during business hours. The whiskey collection is in the cabinet behind his desk." "Give me 10 minutes," I said. "Then meet me by the south stairwell." Taking a deep breath, I walked confidently to Walter's office and entered without hesitation, as if I belonged there. The corner office was impressive, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Behind his massive desk stood an elegant glass cabinet displaying dozens of whiskey bottles arranged by region and age. I quickly spotted the Macallan Estate Reserve prominently positioned on the middle shelf. Approaching the cabinet, I carefully opened the glass door and examined the bottle without touching it. The seal appeared intact, just as Heather had reported. As I considered how to explain taking the bottle, I heard voices approaching. Quickly closing the cabinet, I positioned myself by Walter's bookshelf, pretending to examine the business titles displayed there. The door opened, and Walter himself entered, stopping abruptly when he saw me. "Jessica," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "What are you doing in my office?" "Walter," I replied, summoning all my courage. "I apologize for the intrusion. I came to speak with HR about my situation, and hoped to catch you for a brief conversation as well." His expression was unreadable as he closed the door behind him. "I was told you were on administrative leave pending the investigation." "I am," I confirmed, "which is why I needed to speak with you directly. There are aspects of this situation you should be aware of before the board meeting tomorrow." Walter gestured for me to sit. You have 5 minutes. Taking the seat across from his desk, I decided that complete honesty was my only viable option. The whiskey I gave you contains evidence in a federal investigation, I stated bluntly. His eyebrows rose, but he remained silent, waiting for me to continue. Ethan Williams is working with federal investigators, I explained. He planted a storage device in the bottle seal containing evidence of financial fraud, allegedly committed by Daniel Cooper. Walter's gaze shifted to the whiskey cabinet behind him. That is a very serious accusation, Jessica. I had no knowledge of this when I gave you the bottle, I continued. I only learned about it the next morning when Ethan called me in a panic. By then, federal agents were already at the office and I was placed on administrative leave for unknowingly interfering with their investigation. Why would Ethan give you evidence without explaining its significance? Walter asked, his tone skeptical but not dismissive. According to him, it was to maintain the chain of custody with documentation while keeping the evidence secure, I explained. My birthday provided a plausible cover for the transfer. He never anticipated I would give it to someone else. Walter was silent for a long moment, studying me intently. You realize how extraordinary this sounds. I do, I acknowledged. But before you open that bottle at tomorrow's board meeting, I felt you deserved to know the truth. The seal contains evidence that may implicate one of your executives in serious financial crimes. Walter stood and walked to the whiskey cabinet, examining the bottle without touching it. Let us say I believe you, he said finally. What do you propose we do with this information? We should verify whether the device exists without alerting Daniel, I suggested. If the evidence is there, you can make an informed decision about how to proceed. Walter considered this, then pressed a button on his desk phone. Security, please have Chief Security Officer Garrett Morgan come to my office immediately. No one else. Within minutes, a tall man in a crisp suit entered the office. You needed me, sir, he asked, glancing curiously at me. Garrett, I need your expertise for a delicate matter, Walter explained. This conversation does not leave this room. After Walter briefed him on the situation, Garrett carefully examined the bottle's seal, using a small magnifying tool from his pocket. There does appear to be something embedded in the wax seal, he confirmed. It is quite sophisticated, nearly invisible to the naked eye. Walter's expression hardened. Can you extract it without damaging the device? Yes, but I would recommend having our cybersecurity team standing by to secure the data immediately, Garrett advised. Proceed, Walter ordered, but keep this absolutely confidential. If Daniel Cooper is indeed involved in financial fraud, I do not want him alerted before we review the evidence. While Garrett worked on carefully extracting the device, Walter turned to me. Jessica, I owe you an apology. You have been caught in the middle of something far beyond your control. I just want to clear my name, I replied honestly. My career and reputation are on the line for a situation I knew nothing about. If this evidence confirms what you have told me, I will personally ensure your name is cleared, Walter promised. Garrett successfully removed a tiny memory card from the bottle seal. Got it, he announced. With your permission, I will take this to our secure server room for analysis. Go, Walter agreed. Report back as soon as you have verified the contents. After Garrett left, Walter and I waited in tense silence. 30 minutes later, Garrett returned with a grave expression. The device contains extensive financial records, he reported. Based on my preliminary review, they appear to show systematic embezzlement from the Eastern Region marketing budget. Funds were diverted to shell companies controlled by someone using multiple aliases. The documentation links back to accounts associated with Daniel Cooper. Walter's face darkened with anger. How much? Initial estimate is approximately $2.7 million over the past 18 months, Garrett replied. Walter turned to me. Jessica, I believe we owe you our gratitude. Your decision to come forward with this information, despite the personal risk, shows remarkable integrity. What happens now? I asked. Now, Walter said firmly, we set a trap. The board meeting tomorrow will proceed as planned, but with a slight modification. Instead of a celebration, it will be Daniel Cooper's day of reckoning. He outlined his plan, which was both simple and elegant. Daniel would be asked to present the Eastern Region financial reports as scheduled. Walter would then reveal the evidence during the presentation with federal agents waiting nearby. The approach would minimize disruption to the company while ensuring Daniel faced consequences for his actions. As for you, Jessica, Walter concluded, I would like you to attend the meeting as my special guest. Your administrative leave is officially over. In fact, I believe your marketing insights about the Eastern region deserve particular attention given the circumstances. For the first time in days, I felt hope returning. My impulsive decision had created a crisis, but my determination to face it directly might save not just my career, but the company's integrity as well. The next morning, I arrived at TechVision Enterprises through the executive entrance escorted by Garrett. The boardroom was prepared for the quarterly meeting with executives and board members gathering for coffee and small talk before the formal presentations began. Walter had contacted the federal investigators overnight, sharing our discovery and coordinating the planned intervention. Agent Rivers and her team were positioned discreetly throughout the building, waiting for their cue. Daniel Cooper arrived last, carrying a portfolio of presentation materials. He faltered momentarily upon seeing me, but quickly recovered, offering a practiced smile. Jessica, good to see you back. I trust your administrative leave was productive. His condescension only confirmed my suspicions about the threatening text message I had received. I smiled politely without responding, taking my seat beside Walter at the head of the table. Thank you all for joining us for this critical quarterly review. Walter began, once everyone was seated. Before we begin the formal presentations, I want to address some concerns about our Eastern region performance that have been raised by the board. Daniel shifted in his seat, flipping through his presentation notes with forced nonchalance. Daniel, I believe you have prepared extensively on this topic, Walter continued. Would you mind leading this portion of the discussion? Of course, Daniel replied, standing to connect his laptop to the projection system. His presentation was slick and confident, detailing apparent market challenges and competitive pressures that had impacted Eastern region performance. As you can see, Daniel explained, pointing to a complex chart, the allocation of marketing resources has been inefficient, leading to suboptimal returns in these territories. I noticed several board members glancing at me, clearly wondering why the marketing director was present during what appeared to be criticism of her department. Interesting perspective, Walter commented when Daniel finished. However, I recently came across some alternative data regarding the Eastern region that I would like to share with the board. Walter nodded to Garrett, who connected a different laptop to the projector. The screen displayed financial records extracted from the whiskey bottle device, showing clear evidence of funds being diverted to shell companies. These records, Walter explained calmly, show systematic embezzlement of company funds under the guise of marketing vendor payments. Jessica Turner's department never received these budgeted resources, explaining the apparent underperformance in those territories. Daniel's face drained of color. What is this? I have never seen these documents before. They were recovered from your personal encrypted storage, Walter replied. The same storage you believed had been permanently deleted when you discovered the internal audit scheduled for next month. Daniel looked around frantically, then suddenly bolted for the door. He yanked it open only to find Agent Rivers standing there with two other federal agents. Daniel Cooper, she announced formally, you are under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes against TechVision Enterprises. As the agents led Daniel away, the boardroom erupted in shocked conversations. Walter called for order, then proceeded to explain the investigation and evidence recovery in measured terms, emphasizing the company's full cooperation with federal authorities. I would also like to acknowledge Jessica Turner's instrumental role in bringing this situation to light, Walter added, gesturing toward me. Despite being placed on administrative leave due to a misunderstanding, she demonstrated remarkable integrity by coming forward with critical information that helped us uncover this fraud. The board members turned to me with new appreciation, and I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. My reputation was not just being salvaged, but enhanced through this resolution. After the meeting concluded, Agent Rivers approached me privately. Miss Turner, I owe you an apology, she said. We incorrectly assessed your involvement in this situation. Your actions yesterday were instrumental in bringing this case to successful conclusion. Thank you, I replied. I understand you were just doing your job. Agent Williams, or Ethan as you know him, also extends his apologies, she added. His decision to involve you without proper briefing violated protocol, and he has been reprimanded accordingly. Later that afternoon, Walter called me into his office where Ethan was waiting. He looked different somehow, more serious in his formal attire. "Jessica," Ethan began, "I want to personally apologize for putting you in such an impossible position. The operation was my responsibility, and I made a serious error in judgment." "Why did you choose me?" I asked the question that had been bothering me for days. "Your reputation for integrity," he replied honestly. "We needed someone above reproach who would document the gift officially. I never anticipated you would give it away, but that was my failure in planning, not yours." Walter interrupted. "Jessica, in light of recent events, we have an important decision to make. Daniel's position as VP of Sales and Marketing will need to be filled immediately. Given your performance and the integrity you have demonstrated, I would like to offer you the promotion." The offer stunned me. "That is very generous, Walter, but I would need to consider it carefully." "Of course," he nodded. "Take the weekend to think it over. In the meantime, you are officially reinstated as Marketing Director with full back pay for your administrative leave period." In the following days, I worked closely with our legal team to implement new transparency policies across all departments. The experience had highlighted dangerous gaps in our corporate oversight, particularly regarding financial approvals and vendor relationships. The Eastern Region marketing campaigns, now properly funded, began showing significant improvement. The team welcomed me back warmly, with Heather receiving special recognition for her loyalty and assistance during the crisis. Ethan, or Agent Williams, was reassigned to another operation after completing his debriefings at TechVision. Before leaving, he stopped by my office one last time. "I learned an important lesson from you," he said. "Sometimes the straightforward approach is more effective than elaborate undercover operations. And I learned not to accept expensive whiskey from employees I have known for less than 6 months," I replied with a smile. After careful consideration, I accepted the promotion to VP of Sales and Marketing. The role offered an opportunity to integrate the two departments that had previously worked at cross purposes under Daniel's leadership. The experience transformed my approach to leadership in unexpected ways. While I had always valued professionalism and clear boundaries, I now recognized the importance of transparency and open communication. The culture of secrecy that Daniel had fostered had enabled his crimes and nearly destroyed my career. My first initiative as VP was implementing a mentorship program pairing employees across departments to break down silos and build genuine relationships based on mutual respect rather than expensive gifts or political maneuvering. The whiskey bottle, minus its secret evidence, found a permanent home in Walter's collection, a reminder of how an innocent birthday gift had unveiled corporate fraud and changed the trajectory of my career. If there is one thing I have learned from this experience, it is that integrity is not just about following rules and policies, but about having the courage to face difficult situations directly, even when your reputation and career are on the line. Sometimes the most uncomfortable decisions lead to the most important breakthroughs. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have given away an expensive gift from an employee, or would you have kept it? Have you ever had an innocent decision unexpectedly change the course of your career? Share your thoughts in the employee comments below. Do not forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this true story of corporate intrigue and unexpected consequences. Thank you for listening, and remember that sometimes our greatest challenges become our greatest opportunities for growth.